I'd first like to thank my parents for making the trip up. They're here this evening, and I'd also like to thank one of our kids. The other two are studying for exams, but this one is a senior and getting ready to go to college, so she's done. But I'd like to thank my daughter for being here as well. And last but not least, and most importantly, I'd like to thank my wife for being here as well. So thank you. I was born 43 years ago, yesterday, May 18th, 1979. I was born in the flood of 1979, actually. And being in Greenville, I know that each of you can appreciate and understand what it means, what that truly means, and I empathize. My mother, she was a school teacher for the Madison County School District and the Jackson Public School District for 28 and a half years. And if I didn't give her that half, she may come up to the stage. My father, he was a postal service worker, a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service for 32 years. And they met at Jackson State University in the early 70s. And it was through my dad that I fell in love with the sunny bloom of the South and SWAC football on a fall Saturday night. My dad actually celebrated his 50th golden anniversary from Jackson State University a couple of weeks ago. My mother grew up in Scott County, Mississippi, and my father, he was born in Lowndes County, Mississippi. And as a child, I spent countless summers with my grandparents in Scott County, where we would fix fence, we would take care of the cows, we'd bale hay, we'd go to the sale barn, and we'd ride horses late into the evening. And I spent almost every 4th of July in Columbus with my dad. My grandpa, he was born on the 4th of July, so every 4th of July, even after he passed away in 1986, we would always spend every 4th of July in Columbus. I said all of that to give you an idea of who I am, because I think it's important that you know who I am and I know each of you. Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. So the why is absolutely and vitally important. If my friend Grace Swope, the former executive director of the Mississippi Development Authority, and he went on to be the CEO and president of Enterprise Florida, if he were here today, he would talk about the 4 W's. Now, what are the 4 W's? The 4 W's are who you are, what you do, why you do it, and for whom. And so Gray, having served in those roles, he's now the CEO and president of Vision First Advisors, which is a subsidiary of my law firm, and they're actually doing some work for Washington County right now on its economic strategy. And they do site selection work around the country, and they work with communities just like Washington County. But the who you are, who are you? Well, you're Greenville, you're Arcola, you're Hollandale, you're Stoneville, you're Leland, you're Winterville, you're Metcalf, and most importantly, you're Washington County. You're a community that has amassed millions of dollars in workforce development training grants. You're a community that supports its existing industry and investing in capital and investing in job creation. You're a community with an $800,000 DOJ grant that will support bettering your community in terms of crime prevention. You're a community that has received the first ever USDA Rural Partners Network program. And you're a community with a thriving downtown with over 17 of capital investment, a nonprofit hotel that I happen to be staying in this evening, and you're a community that's about to have a brand new courthouse right here in Washington County. You're a community of partnerships creating valuable ecosystems. So what do you do? Well, you have to plan and you must engage each other, and you can't leave any element out. You have to engage the faith-based organizations, the nonprofits, and it's vital that no one be left out. You must engage everyone. And why do you do it? You have to do it for purpose. You have to have a purposeful mission. And who do you do it for? You do it for the generations to come. Now, my first real job, my first real experience where I even learned the word economic development, I was a project manager for the state of Mississippi. I saw all 82 counties. I traveled outside the country for the first time. And as a young project manager working for the Development Authority, on the heels of one of the largest announcements in Nissan, I got a chance to work on one of those supplier projects. And while working on it, we were structuring the deal, putting the incentive package together, not unlike the airport deal that the city's currently working on. And every opportunity or every time we worked on something, the lawyers would come in the room, and I would always marvel at their work. They either knew the answer to the question, or they knew how to get it. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. And every time I asked around about who should I seek out, everybody would always come up and say this name, Frank Stinley. I'd ask again, Frank Stinley. I always hear that name. Well, Frank Stinley was a Harvard-trained lawyer and one of the first transactional lawyers in the state of Mississippi, African-American lawyers, to be listed in the coveted Red Book, which is a book that talks about lawyers who've done millions and millions of dollars of deals. And he was that lawyer, the first one. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to meet Frank. Frank died in April of 2004. But what I learned from Frank is that he was the mentor I never met. He was the mentor, even though I never met him. He was the mentor that guided me and showed me the signs of why I love what I do today. There's a gentleman named Ron Kitchens. Ron has worked on some of the largest economic development projects in the country. And one of Ron's mantras is, the greatest force for change is a job. He said that one of the single most significant things that's changing America right now is a job. And I'm going to add another component to it. I'm going to argue that it's economic opportunity, it's access to the marketplace, and it's what we believe in America is everybody's inalienable right, the American dream. Ron went on to say that according to a guy named Jim Clifton, Jim is the CEO and chairman of Gallup, a data firm. Of the 7 billion people on this planet, 3 billion of those people, what they're concerned about the most, what keeps them up at night, is a job. Ron would go on to say that in terms of jobs and what they think about and truly what they worry about, what they think about more than the safety of their children, shelter, food, health care, etc., is a job. Because it's all connected to upward mobility. Of those 7 million people on this planet, there are only 1.2 billion jobs of the 7 billion people on this planet. So we have to grow the pie. We have to do things that's going to create economic activity. And more importantly, we have to create a table where everyone has a seat. I was probably 10 or 11 years old when I first realized the true and emotional power of a job. I already told you my father worked for the United United States Postal Service. But if you recall, in the mid-'80s, there was a term, going postal. It was when letter carriers or postal workers would go in and these mass shootings would occur. And I was worried about my father going to work every day. And Dad was, he loved his job, and he cared about his co-workers, and he was a member of the union. And I don't know if that's a bad word in this room, but he was a proud member of the union. He was a president of the local branch. He rose to be president of the state union, and he held numerous federal positions as a member of the union. And he was also the city shop steward. And that's sort of like all of his colleagues' lawyer. And everybody would come to Dad. And they'd always bring their grievances to Dad, and he would fix it. And it wasn't uncommon every night at home for one of his co-workers to be at our dinner table. But it was one night that there was a gentleman at our table. And up until then, besides a funeral, I'd never seen a grown man cry. This man was crying because he had been treated unfairly about one of the most powerful things that one can have, and that is a job. And it was my dad's role to guide him through that process and help him to get his job back. It was in that moment. It was in that very moment that I knew just the true power behind work and opportunity. How many of you know the name Jim Barstow? Jim Barstow is a Mississippian. Jim, right out of college, went to work for IBM. And during that time, I think it was probably sometime in the 70s, there were no real computer science programs, but in going to work for IBM, he did a 2-year training program on their 360 operating system. So he learned a lot about systems and programs and computers. And after IBM, Jim went to go work for a small company called Federal Express that was actually in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time. And as Federal Express would grow, they moved to Memphis and ultimately became FedEx. But while at FedEx, Jim rose to be the COO of that company, and he developed their early tracking package system, which is why we can have goods and services or packages at our doorsteps the next day. After FedEx, Jim went to a company out in Seattle called McCall Communications. McCall would ultimately become AT&T, and he would be the CEO of that company. After McCall, he got a call from a guy named Jim Clark, a billionaire, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. And Jim Clark said to Jim Barstow, I want you to come and run this small startup called Mosaic. And Barstow thought to himself, Mosaic? He read up on it, and Jim said, this place is being run by about 12-year-old kids. I mean, why would I want to do that? But he did. And his first order of business as CEO of Mosaic was to change the name to Netscape. And so now, that's a story you can read about on the internet, and that's how the internet was born, pun intended. But one of the things that I learned from Jim over lunch, as I was considering an opportunity and weighing it, and Jim said to me, Trey, as a general rule, the most fortunate of us will get 3 significant opportunities that could change our lives. Something that could take your life on an amazing trajectory. He said that life is comprised of seasons. Spend time in your seasons and recognize when they change. Your season is changing, Washington County. You have great leadership and great stakeholders which is evident by everyone in this room right now. The county has great leadership in its board of supervisors that's supportive of economic development, big and small. The city of Greenville has a great mayor and a great city council doing everything in their power to propel the largest city in the county forward. You have a United States congressman who's one of the most powerful elected officials in the country, who's doing everything in his power to propel the 2nd Congressional District forward. You have access to billions of dollars in infrastructure funds at the state level and the federal level, which is more money than we've ever seen in our entire lifetime. So I submit to you, Washington County, now's the time. Now's the time to do something you've never done before. Now's the time to be bold. Now's the time to build that museum you may have put off. Now's the time to build those new ball fields. Now's the time to fix your aging infrastructure. Make improvements to your port, your airport. And now is the time to swing from the fence, to swing to the fence and go after that project that you thought you didn't deserve. Now's the time to take chances. Because even in failure, you can learn from your mistakes. Because if you don't fail, one might argue that you never even tried. When I worked for Phil Bryant in 2012, 2013, I was one of his lawyers and I was his economic development policy advisor. And I was tasked with drafting a piece of legislation after he had come back from Houston, Texas to see the Texas Medical Center. And this was before he was inaugurated. And on my desk was all of these documents that I read through to craft this legislation. And I did, we worked on it, and it had success. And when I got out into private law practice, I was asked to give a TED Talk. My wife was there, my daughter was there, and the title of it was How to Make Healthcare an Economic Driver. It was good. It was a good talk. But it wasn't great. It wasn't great. The reason it wasn't great, because I consciously left out my personal and heartfelt feelings about the expansion of Medicaid for fear of judgment and retribution. So I ask you, Washington County, when that moment of truth comes to you, whatever it is, will you honor it or will you let it pass you by? When you're faced with questions about why the best and brightest of us are leaving Mississippi or Washington County, are you going to hold the mirror up and answer that question with truth and love and integrity? Or are you going to lose that opportunity? We've got many issues in our state pertaining to race and socioeconomics, but the question is, will we face those issues with real solution, with love and compassion? One of my favorite movies of all times is a movie called Groundhog's Day. And in Groundhog's Day, there's the main protagonist. His name is Phil Connors. Phil is a weatherman and an anchor, and he's just a miserable human being. He's angry all the time. He's mean to people. He's disrespectful. But on Groundhog's Day, his job is to report on the groundhog, on whether or not he saw a shadow. And he did a decent job. And on the morning after, he ended up staying, there was a blizzard. He stayed in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. He woke up and he looked at his clock. He thought it was a new day. He was preparing to go back home, and it was the same exact day. And guess what? every morning that he woke up, it was the same day. He was cursed to relive the same day over and over and over. But in repeating that same day, Phil finally began to get something right. Yes, he failed, and he failed, and he failed, but he kept getting up. He kept trying again. And although it took him a while, he overcame his anger. He found kindness. He found empathy. Through the death of an old man that he tried to save, through the boy who he would save every day from falling from the tree, to the old ladies who he would fix their flat, to the man in the restaurant who he would save from choking, Phil learned to serve others. But most importantly, Phil learned love. So this time loop that Phil encounters might have been something supernatural, but it serves as a metaphor for a typical life. You know, many people can probably relate to Phil's predicament. You know, we sometimes feel trapped in the routine of our jobs that we might not particularly like. Sometimes we have trouble connecting with others on a deep and meaningful level. Sure, we function okay, but sometimes we're just profoundly unhappy. And so there's an element of truth in this movie from the fact that we're repeating the same day over and over. But I think the biggest thing that affects people is the fact that Phil is presented with the exact same day. And the very first time he's presented with it is probably the absolute worst day of his life. But by the end of the movie, we realize it's still the exact same day, but somehow it became the best day of his life. So make this day a day that we'll never get again. The best day of your life, Lincoln. Make this day the day that we will never get again. The best day of your life, Greenville. Make this day the best day of your life, Arcola. Make this day the best day of your life, Metcalf, Stoneville, Winterville, Elizabeth. Make this day the best day of your life. Because according to my friend Gray again, and a writer, Margaret B., a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Thank you.
Give it up for Trey. Make today the best day. That's what it's about. You know, something to I don't know, have fun with. Kate, come up here, please. Trey, come up here. I know y'all don't hate me, but it's Trey's birthday. It was yesterday, actually. He turned 43. So, Trey, we have a small gift for you. But can we all join in with a round of happy birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Trey. Happy birthday to you. I promise to watch it.